Welcome to episode 3 of the Always On podcast series. I'm your host, Jason Albuquerque, recording here from Carousel's Executive Briefing Center here in Rhode Island. This episode, we have a great topic. It's a topic that I've been extremely excited about, and our guest I've been excited to have on. We're going to be covering business transformation with conversational AI. This is the Always On podcast series. We explore the intersection between technology, security, and business with the industry's best. All right, let's go. We have such a great guest here today. So excited to have our very own VP of the Contact Center Solutions, Steve Drew. Steve, welcome to Always On.
Thank you. Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for joining us today. And let's start off with a little bit of your background, right? You have such an impressive background. And let's talk a little bit about that and what brought you here to Carousel.
Sure. So, like a lot of folks, I've done a lot of different things over the years, but I got pretty heavy into contact center AI and conversational interactions, probably about 14 years ago. So I spent many years at a large systems integrator called eLoyalty. Big Cisco partner, was bought by Teletech about halfway through, and I led services for the eastern region of the organization there. Primary focus there was on big contact center migrations, a lot of it via to Cisco, Genesys, everything in between. And then I left eLoyalty and went to Cigna Health Insurance. Cigna, based out of Hartford, one of the largest insurance companies in the world. I led the technology organization at Cigna that was responsible for all of the customer contact, customer experience technologies globally, which was really good. So, we were supporting about 23,000 concurrent agents, everything under the sun, every platform, Cisco, Avaya, Genesys, Twilio, led that team through a lot of different modernization efforts, led agile, cultural transformation, stuff like that. So, that's the part of my career that's relevant to the conversation. There were things I did before that are not relevant that people can look up on LinkedIn if they want. I came to Carousel. I missed the experiences that I had at eLoyalty, working with different customers, different settings, small businesses as well as large. As you can imagine, there are limitations when you're working in the 20,000 plus agent arena that kind of slow things down. Most of our customers are 1,000 agents or less, mid-market, or large organizations, but with smallish contact centers. I mean, there are some exceptions, but I came here primarily to kind of relive some of the enjoyment I had while I was at eLoyalty, and then also I was attracted to the technology agnostic approach that Carousel has, right? Yeah. So that's really important to me, to be able to position what makes sense to customers, not lead with a particular solution. Given that we partner with Cisco, Avaya, Twilio, InContact, Five9, Google, everything, it really makes a big difference when you're trying to help an organization get to where they want to be with a reasonable amount of investment without blowing up everything that they've done, to date.
Yeah. That's the beauty of Carousel, right? It allows us to take that consultative posture and really bring true solutions to our customers that fit their business needs, right? That's the beauty of being here at Carousel. For the listeners who haven't met Steve yet or had the opportunity to talk to you, I say to the listeners, tap into this man because he's a wealth of knowledge and honestly, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. So, I appreciate it. Steve, honestly, the world is turning conversational, right? I mean, we have so many conversational interactions from consumer level at a business level. I mean, the example I always use is even in my own home. My children barely know what a remote control is. They walk into my house, they use my assistant, and they turn the TV on, right? They play music. Literally, my home is at their command. They turn on the air conditioner, right? So having that conversational interaction, whether it's with your Google Assistant, Siri, whatever the case may be, we're getting more and more conversational, bridging that gap between human and machine, right? And now you look at it from a business to customer perspective or an employee right, to employer perspective, I'm just noticing more and more the quality of those interactions increasing, and it's getting better and better, right? So from your perspective, can you demystify a little bit and talk a little bit about, number one, what is this behemoth of conversational AI? Because there's a lot to it, right? There's a lot of components to it, technologies behind it, and what those components are and really how it works.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do my best, right? So, if you go back, so I like to talk to customers about this. If we go back 5-6 years ago, there were a lot of organizations that were attempting to create what we would call natural language IVRs. And maybe before that, let's go back 10 years. And the technology certainly existed for us to greet the caller or the customer with an open-ended question, right? How can I help you today? And many companies, large and small, did that because they recognized that there was a lot of power in opening up a conversation like that versus going through this lengthy hierarchical sort of menu structure where by the time you get to the last option, you forget what they said, and then you go back to the beginning, and then you're hitting 000 because all you want to do is get to an agent. So conceptually, that was a very good idea. In practice, it was very, very difficult. And what you found is that for a premise-based application, which was what was the norm at the time, to be able to build this conversational natural language IVR required an incredible amount of work and a lot of talent to really predict the things that a customer might say, and not the simplistic way that you or I might think of, like, I need to check on the status of a flight or something, but the thousands of variations on each of those simple reasons why people call an organization. And so that resulted in these very cumbersome, lengthy files, called grammar files, that sort of documented and predicted everything someone might say. So what happened? They didn't work that well. And so you would get in an experience where it said, "Thanks for calling the company. How can I help you?" You'd say it, and what did it say? "I'm sorry, I didn't get that."
Right.
Or even worse, great. The classic joke, you want to book a flight from Chicago to Russia or whatever, no problem. It's like, no, that's not what I said. Right. And so what then happened is most organizations that attempted to do that scaled it back. And they moved to what we refer to as a directed dialogue interaction. And which is very intuitive, right? And that's what you see in most organizations that do, and I'm talking about the voice channel now, do the voice channel well today. It's a directed dialogue approach, right? Thank you for calling the airline. I see you were just on our website looking at a flight to Mississippi. Is that what you're calling about? Yes. Great. Would you like to book that flight now? Yes. Okay. Well, we're guiding the caller a certain direction when we do that.
Sure.
And that's a lot more manageable. Well, as organizations were struggling with getting this right, as you mentioned earlier, with the Home Assistant, Google and Amazon, and IBM Watson was around. But really, I think that Google and Amazon and making the Home Assistant available to everyone caused what was once this extremely time-consuming and difficult activity to become one that was manageable. And what I mean by that is we've now moved to a conversational design where I don't need to think of the 30,000 ways people might say something. I'm probably okay with 50. And when I think of 50 ways to say something, I know that my cloud virtual assistant API and the machine learning that occurs within Google and Amazon in particular are going to extrapolate upon that for me and kind of fill in the blanks. And so that's allowed us to more rapidly build voice bots, right? And also chat bots using the same methodology. So in answer to your question, what are the pieces, right? It's really the most conversational AI interactions are a combination of what we call intents, or the things that I think someone might say, and actions, right, that I want my bot to perform based off of understanding that intent. And when we deploy that in the cloud using cloud APIs, public cloud APIs, we have that ability to streamline the process and get to a proof of value much faster than we were able to before.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the goal for this is to get positive improvements in a customer experience, right? By leveraging things like speech recognition, natural language understanding to make sense of what it just transcribed, right? And then having that compute power on the back end to really deliver on that intent, right? Is that basically a good summation of that?
Yeah, it is. And you know, the things you just mentioned, I think there's a need for both a high likelihood of understanding what you're saying, and then speaking to you with a speech engine that is friendly and pleasing to listen to.
Sure.
And so that's the other area where there's been tremendous improvements in the cloud. As you probably know, when you talk to Siri or talk to Alexa, or talk to the other one, I won't say because it'll answer me over here.
Right. Don't do it.
Right. The voice quality is incredibly realistic. And not only is it really good, but it's constantly evolving. You can't out Google, right? Or these companies. And so they're just creating such great experiences so rapidly. So when you have high likelihood of understanding and speaking back to the customer in using a voice that is, again, high quality, you're more likely to use that service, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We add some personalization to that. I recognize who you are, what you want, where you were yesterday. We go from a negative experience where it's obvious that I'm trying to prevent you from talking to an agent to a positive experience where I'm getting you off the phone very quickly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you know, even from my perspective, you were talking about the consumer side of it, right? I've noticed a difference. I was an early adopter of the Home Assistant, right? And I've noticed a huge difference where, you know, when I first bought into the Home Assistant, I'd really make jokes with my kids and say they don't understand you because you have a New England accent, right? That because they'd constantly be yelling at the device to try to get it to understand them. But just the rate of improvement over the course of years has been incredible. I mean, we rarely have an instance of that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so exciting. And you know, I think that that's really applicable for organizations that actually might be a little bit behind in terms of the investments that they've made.
Right.
So you may be a company that doesn't have chat, doesn't have SMS. Maybe you're using a basic touch tone IVR to, say press 1 for sales, 2 for service.
Yeah.
You know, a few years ago, reaching that conversational natural language, experience would have meant a lot of premise-based infrastructure and software investments, right? Where you're planning against your peak capacity, right? And, building these redundant systems and all that. Now we simply say, well, let's build it in the cloud. We'll redirect your inbound calls there, handle all of the treatment in the cloud, and then when I'm done, I'll bring it back into your current environment.
It actually could have played into a benefit for some of those organizations where they held off on the investment a little bit, and now we've reached that tipping point where a lot is cloud-based. The investment isn't going to be as much. The overhead isn't going to be as much, right? The internal operational overhead won't be as much as far as manpower. So I think we've kind of hit that sweet spot. So that's actually a great segue, because the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is really how is conversational AI being used today in the enterprise, right? How are organizations looking at these technologies, deriving business value out of it, and what are some use cases that you've seen out there out in the field with our customers?
So I think that people who do it well identify common reasons why people call or chat, right? Because you have to understand this is an escalation from a self-service channel normally. I would say, with rare exceptions, organizations offer some type of digital self-service option to their customer. It could be an app, could be a portal. And, as we know, the adoption of those self-service channels is rising rapidly. Most contact centers, if you describe their call patterns today, you would say that the volume of calls is slowly going down as compared to the growth of the enterprise, while the complexity of the calls is increasing.
Sure.
And that's because we have more and more reasons why people used to call that they can simply go on a website and do something on their own. When a customer, consumer, somebody leaves that self-service channel and goes into an assisted channel, they're doing so, I mean, I'm speaking, in obvious sentences here, because they couldn't do what they wanted to do, or they're frustrated with what they saw, right?
Yeah, right.
And so it's like health insurance, for example. I need a new ID card. I can't figure out how to order a new ID card on the self-service portal. I'm not really frustrated. I just need a new ID card. I have a chat bot. It says, how can I help you? It says, I need a new ID card. The chat bot says, great, let me help you with that. Gather some information, ID card's on the way, you're done. It's a very straightforward, simple, common reason why people contact that we know has a very high likelihood of success.
Right.
On the other hand, use the health insurance example again. You're reviewing your claims. The $12,000 claim that was denied makes you a little upset, right?
Right.
You're not going to have a positive experience with a chatbot.
Right.
Because only one outcome you're looking for, and that's change that status. And so, where this is being used successfully is when an organization does a good job of identifying the things that are well suited towards automation, well suited towards conversational AI, and invest in those areas, and also recognize that there are absolutely cases where no self-service is going to be a positive experience, and I need to get that person to an agent, very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the, and I think that for a lot of enterprises, not everyone runs the business 24/7, 365. If I can identify the top 20 reasons why people call, and 5 of them represent 25% of my call volume, a bot, a voice bot or a chat bot is available 24/7, 365, right? And so the other way, this is used is a backup to live when your live contact center is down, but you still want to offer some level of self-service to a caller or to someone who's on a portal. Then it's a great opportunity to use AI in that case.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, how far along are we with things like sentiment analysis? Because you talked about that, right? I'm frustrated. Yeah. I have that $12,000 claim that I want retracted or taken care of. I know sentiment analysis gets thrown around a lot with conversational AI. Is that an emerging technology that will, for organizations to future-proof themselves? You start looking at what's emerging and what could be hitting within the next few years. Is that something that could be hitting?
I think so. I mean, it's first of all, I do not have a PhD in statistics or anything like that, right? So I am not, a renowned expert, but just as a user of these services, of these APIs, and thinking about, reasonable use cases where sentiment analysis come into play, it's a valuable thing to understand. The conversation today really, we should be thinking about public cloud and the solutions that are available to me from the main public cloud providers, Azure, IBM, Google, and Amazon. All of them have relatively similar solutions around conversational AI, real-time transcription services, real-time sentiment analysis, et cetera. And each one offers different insights into what that sentiment means. In one case, it could just be a number, right? So I see the words coming through and the sentiment is negative 0.7, okay?
Yep.
That's probably worse than negative 0.2 and, whatever, or better than, worse than negative 0.2 and better than negative, 0.8. And so what does that mean? I mean, it's just an indicator that something isn't going the way we want it to. Other solutions give us words, right? Frustrated, angry, happy, sad, depressed, lonely. So, it really runs the gamut in terms of the feedback you get from the system. And so where you're investing your time and efforts in terms of public cloud and which APIs you're working with will have some impact on how you might use sentiment analysis. But the best example could be I'm in a bot or a voice bot or a chat bot, and I recognize on the fly that However, either a word or a number, this is a bad situation, and then I escalate, right? And I say, hey, looks like you're frustrated. Let me get you to an agent right away, and maybe they can help you. Let me put you in a priority queue, or I'm closed. Let me have someone call you first thing tomorrow morning.
Sure.
We were talking about sentiment analysis earlier to a customer, and the conclusion was, I don't think we're going to use this real time right now, but let's keep track of it. Right. And let's see, and let's look later and say, okay, what were our outcomes and what was the sentiment there? And does that mean something? And can we infer something in the future where we might actually build business rules, around that?
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Now, one of the, now you talked a lot about, business to customer type interactions, but honestly, when you and I first started talking about conversational AI, it was actually for internal operations here once COVID hit, right? And for us, talking about it from a personnel perspective, it was really eye-opening on what we can achieve with the technology. So can you talk a little bit about how it's used with employee-employer interactions?
But I'm going to use a contact center example.
Okay.
And so the best one I can give you is there's this concept called Agent Assist. Actually, one of our partners, which is Google, calls it Agent Assist. So it's both the name of their sort of capability as well as a general concept. But if you can imagine yourself as an agent, you're taking a call and you have a conversation, sort of evolving. And as that conversation occurs, it's transcribed real time. The sentiment is analyzed real time. The words being spoken are analyzed real time, and triggers can be fired based off of those things, right? So a good example, probably a classic example, would be mobile phones, right? I'm a mobile phone customer service rep, and I have someone who wants to cancel their service. I hear the words cancel service. I'm not in the cancellation department. A knowledge-based article pops up to me immediately saying, here's the 5 steps to avoid cancellation, right? Emergency settings. So the role of AI from an internal use case perspective really is around getting better information to knowledge workers faster based off of the context of the interaction that's occurring right now, all interactions that have occurred prior, and how and the outcomes of all of those. And really ultimately what that can result in is shorter handle times, right? So we become more efficient operationally, and happier agents, right? Agents who have better information are happier in their jobs. They have got the tools they need. They're not scrambling for details, and that leads to a higher retention rate, right? So, and I know you didn't ask this question, but I think it's important to really emphasize that when we use AI in both a customer-facing setting as well as an agent-facing, we're able to hit the trifecta of contact center, which is happy customers, lower operational costs, and higher agent retention, right? And that's what everybody really wants to do. And those were not realistic goals, for a long time. There was always a trade-off, and that's less and less the case today.
No, that's a great position to be in when you can please the customer, please the employee, and attain operational efficiency at the same time. I mean, you're absolutely right. That is the trifecta, right? So I mean, as a CIO, I know with emerging technologies, there's challenges, right? Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges that are out there today? I gave the example earlier. I would joke with my kids, they don't understand you because you have a New England accent, right? So things like dialects, accents, slang, things of that nature. I think we're progressing in those, but those have been challenges in the past, have they not?
Yeah, for sure. There's trade-offs, right? So for everything you get from speed and agility in using public cloud APIs for conversational AI, there's a slight trade-off on depth of capability. The solutions that were used for many years, and we're specifically talking about the voice channel here, right? Because you're talking about understanding. These are solutions that have been fine-tuned for many, many, many years, where you have a lot of control over how you create that natural language understanding right within that, IVR application. And, there's no question that some of that granular control isn't there in all cases when you're building like a voice bot, right? But I think that the benefit far exceeds the limitations, right? We can deploy a voice bot. I mean, we do stuff for fun, right? But we can deploy one right now if we wanted to. And 10 minutes later, we'd have one, and you could ask it questions, and it would answer you, canned responses, and it would recognize what you're saying, and with no tuning, no programming whatsoever. And so I think part of the what's the word I'm looking for? Part of the strategy needs to be, one, you need to know which public cloud platform you're really going to align to. And you kind of have to trust their R&D, right, and their product roadmap.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
If, as we see the quality improving in voices, and we see the quality improving in speech recognition, these are platforms that are supporting millions and millions of callers on a daily basis. We give up that control, and we kind of have to trust the Googles and the Amazons to handle that.
Right. The most important part is finding that partner that fits you the best, fits your organization, your culture, your business, right? That's
exactly.
Doing that up front is super important. Yeah. So from an organization who may be coming from a traditional contact center, we want to make the leap into this more modern conversational AI realm. From an adoption perspective, what are some best practices that organizations are using so it's not such a culture shock, right? So it's not such a huge hit within their organization. Obviously you've run contact centers for major organizations. You are consultative to our customers. I'm sure that adoption question comes up in conversations with our customers about, this could be a huge culture shock. How do we make sure adoption, is completely successful?
That's a good question. Let me think about that. So I think that cloud and API-based work is agile in nature.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're an organization that has, historically made large investments on occasion, right? Every 3 years you do a big upgrade, right? Every 5 years you do whatever. You plan for months, then you execute. It is a change in the way you do things, because when we begin to introduce things like conversational AI in the voice channel or in the chat channel, we don't have to figure it all out at once. You don't really even have to know what the end state completely looks like. You just kind of have to have an idea what you want the customer experience to feel like. What that optimal sort of end state experience is, and then you iterate. And for organizations that have not done any work in agile or kind of performed in an iterative development process, or are comfortable with things like minimum viable product and things like that, then it can be a real change in the way you get work done. But all operational leaders want solutions fast and cheap that work. And I think that when you start to talk about the benefits of deploying solutions using Agile, and the greatest one being early understanding of disconnect, the lights go off, the light bulbs go off, right? Because nobody wants to wait 6 months to find out that we misunderstood what they wanted. But everybody's okay with finding out 2 weeks into a project that we misunderstood what they wanted. Everyone's happy then, and they're like, okay, well, let's get it right. And then you pivot and you move on.
Sure.
When you start to talk in those terms, I think that most organizational leaders that have not, implemented technologies that matter, understand the benefits. And I think the other big cultural shift is just the way people spend money, right? There are many companies that we talk to that simply their accounting systems are not. Their financial planning and their budgeting and everything is not set up for consumption-based services. And, they're looking for, what's my annual cost going to be? And all of the solutions we talked about today are consumption-based. We're talking fractions of cents. We look at a dialogue, Google Dialogflow interaction, 0.00 whatever
Right.
cent per call. And you're like, well, how do I, budget for something like this? So that's where starting small, prototyping, using a couple simple use cases, makes a lot of sense. And, at no point is anyone making a huge investment that they're going to, regret later on.
And that makes a lot of sense, right? It's really, hearing how you answered that question, it's more along the lines of organizations who are traditionally used to waterfall type projects implementing a PBX or a system. This is going to be different, right? This is going to be like software development. It's going to be CI/CD pipeline where you're doing continuous improvement, continuous development, and in that iterative process where you're rolling out feature functionality in sprints, like an application development project, right?
Yep, that's correct. And my philosophy is very simple. You only build up to the point that you got the value that you need, right? So in a lot of cases, we have a picture, right? You have this vision, and your vision's going to the moon.
Yep.
That's where everyone wants to go. They want to go to the moon.
Exactly.
And the reality is, you got a helicopter that gets you from point A to point B really fast, right? And you're going to land somewhere in between there, because as you go through these iterative processes, the things that seemed so valuable and important early on become less valuable, right? And so I think that's it. Ultimately, by approaching the deployment that way, you lower cost. And you lower costs, and you achieve value much faster than you would traditionally.
Sure.
But for companies that don't have application developers, that aren't agile and all that, it's scary. A package system comes with certain security blanket type aspects, right? Yep. It's been built, tested to a certain level. Everyone's using it, et cetera. And AI-based solutions, these aren't packaged solutions. They're purpose-built for a particular need. But Google Home, Amazon Alexa are built on it too, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of the proof, right, that these are highly scalable, highly reliable.
Sure. And actually, you mentioning the security blanket. Now, that's a perfect segue into the next conversation, right? I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with sensitive information, personal information, every organization these days is worried about security and privacy. So can you just talk a little bit about these conversational AI applications, how they're designed with security in mind and privacy in mind, to really make sure that our listeners know it is a focus point with these type of technologies, because again, you're building APIs into line of business applications, sensitive information. You could be in a highly regulated environment. Talk a little bit about that, so our listeners know that even in the most regulated, highly compliant organizations, conversational AI is a thing, right? And it's secure.
Yes. It is a thing, and I'm an application developer by training. That's prior to getting into contact center, I was a programmer, and programmers are not the best security.
Oh, do tell.
People, right? And I'm not either. But in anticipation of this question, I looked at so we all have our favorite platforms to work with, favorite APIs and stuff like that. So I looked, said, okay, where are we at? I want to be able to build PCI compliant solutions. I want to be able to build HIPAA compliant solutions. Yes. I want to be able to build GDPR compliant solutions, right? And those are the words that application developers think in. I know that there's a lot of acronyms that you've memorized over the years that mean a lot. And when we go to like the Google security page and look at all the products, it's 3 pages of security credentials, right? And coming from a healthcare background personally, the most important to me was HIPAA compliance, right? I want to be able to build interactions that patients can leverage to improve their outcomes, that doctors can use to communicate with patients. The public cloud AI APIs are highly secure and highly compliant across all of those. And just in my own personal experience, coming from the customer setting and working with my last company's information security organization, they were typically happier with solutions that we deployed on public cloud than they were with the security of the solutions we deployed internally.
Yeah.
And so I think that for developers and for people that aren't security experts, the public cloud providers, Google, Amazon, have made it good for us, right? Because we know that it's buzzword compliant, from a security perspective. I would say that for someone who thinks that this is the type of solution that they might want to leverage, it's 2 words in a Google search, and you're immediately accessing reference material,
Sure.
which is a great thing as well, right? But ultimately, for conversational AI, for automated interactions, for all that, we look at the APIs, right? So we can dig into the details and say, if I use this specific API, does it meet all those boxes? Are there caveats? And so far, the experience has been that we have not run into any issues.
Right. And I mean, that's the benefit of us partnering with the best in breed out there, right? I mean, we're partnering with the best of breed. They're going to put forth that effort to make sure, they're meeting every major regulation, every major framework's needs. So that way, they can get adoption rates across every industry, right? Because ultimately, that's their goal, right? So.
Exactly. We built a prototype this morning for a HIPAA compliant bot to give patients information on testing for certain tests. And the customer could have built that themselves in their current environment, in their current IVR, but that would have been a 3-month effort.
Right.
And so here we know that I can go straight to the solutioning, straight to the design and prototyping, because everything I need all the underlying frameworks are built and ready to go. That's the number one value we get out of using public cloud and public cloud APIs is I don't have to worry about those things. They've been solved already for me, right? I just have to worry that what I build is scalable, that it's not buggy, right? And that it meets the customer's needs, and that really accelerates speed to market and for healthcare, for things like that. That's critically important.
Oh yeah, and that speed to market matters, absolutely, 100%. No, that's great. This has been great information. I mean, so let's talk a little bit about the future, right? Let's talk about the future of conversational AI, the future of work, the future of these agents and how they do work. I mean, historically, some of the fear around using some of these technologies is, my job will be at risk or something of that nature. But we found over time that that's not the case, right? It allows our staff to do, more important tasks, more value add tasks, right? Add value to the customer. So let's talk about what the future of conversational AI brings.
Right. So I agree with what you just said, that in rare cases do we talk to customers who are looking at workforce reduction opportunities. 99% of the time, the objective is, how do I serve my client base better? Everyone knows at this point that customer experience is the big differentiator, right, across many, many different industries. And so when I automate simple tasks initially, when I give better tools to agents, I create more time for them to interact with my customers. I think that the future of work in our industry, in the contact center industry, will be one where we're doing a better job of leveraging the assisted channels, context and historical data, and building better AI from that, right? So although it probably, I don't know, how do I put this? There's likely scenarios that can be discussed that say, we will magically understand what's happening in your contact center, all the things that are being said, and from that, we'll build this conversational AI bot that's kind of self-learning and all that. In reality, it's not quite like that. Really what we're doing is, what are the things people talk about, and how do I automate that? And then I want to build that, process. But I think that over time, that will become a more seamless process where I can observe what an agent does and learn from those actions. Because if you think about conversational AI, at some point, one of two things are going to occur. Customers' issues solved and they are done, not solved, and they want to talk to a human being.
Yeah.
When they go to that not solved, talk to a human being, our systems need to understand, why did that happen?
Right.
And what's happening next? And when we look at what happens next, oh, it's the click, 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 right? It's the API call to the backend system that I don't have today. When we can automate that understanding and then build that into our virtual assistants automatically, then things will be pretty powerful. I think that over time that we'll get there, and that's going to create better experiences for customers and and for agents. But I certainly don't see, and this is just based solely off of feedback from customers that we talked to. No one's talking about an age where they can eliminate or drastically reduce workforces. What they really want to get to is allowing people to spend more time on the phone with customers that need that personalized touch, and less time on things that someone could easily do themselves or through.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, you talked about it earlier, right? The trifecta, right? Yeah. Happy customer, happy agent, right? I mean, that's that, and operational efficiencies on top of it. It really is. It's that trifecta, and I think that's the point we've hit, right? That the technology has progressed to that level where we hit the tipping point, and now we can realize that trifecta for organizations. So, Steve, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been absolutely incredible. We've been able to cover a little bit of the history around conversational AI, some use cases for our customers and what's going on in the field today. Security and privacy concerns, right? We've been able to address that, and really what the future of conversational AI is going to bring to the table for us. I think this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much, and I'm sure our listeners are definitely going to enjoy this. So for more content for our listeners, if you want more content like this, you can go to our on-demand learning section on our website. You can see past Always On virtual series, past Always On podcast series, recordings from our pizza cast. Just go to carouselindustries.com, go to our resources page, and there's an on-demand learning there. Or you can follow us on any of our social media platforms to get our comments of the day, announcements of the day, and leadership insights. So thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, thanks, Steve, for joining us.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too.